Hello and welcome to another United Way Partner Spotlight. Today we're chatting with Rebecca Hargis, the chair of Elevate Montana, and also Jolene Jennings with Lewis and Clark Health. How are you doing today, ladies?
Good, thank you.
Great. Now, what is Elevate Montana all about?
Elevate Montana is a collaborative, and it's a grassroots movement that educates the community about adverse childhood experiences. And we do that through the study that was done in 1995, as well as talk about the factors that mitigate it, which are resilience and having a strong nurturing connection.
Okay. And now we have public health here with us today as well. Why is it that you ladies decided to come and chat with me today together?
Well, when this opportunity arose, we were working on some events for Suicide Prevention Month, which is September. And that also included the Suicide Prevention Coalition, as well as Jolene's group. And we thought, what a great way to talk about suicide, because adverse childhood experiences, if they're left untreated, lead to a host of physical health and mental health issues, which include depression and suicide.
Okay. Now, why adverse childhood experiences? What is the significance of that?
Well, the significance, like I said, was that if they're left untreated.
Okay.
Okay. So when children experience what we call toxic stress during the period from 0 to age 3, we've got all kinds of developmental things going on in the brain. And so it's affecting the brain adversely. And then over a lifetime, over the lifespan, that leads to those physical health issues, such as heart disease, diabetes, things like that, because of the things that are going on internally, and then as well as mental health issues.
Okay.
And that's where I come in, and I worked with Rebecca on our local advisory council, and that is a coalition group of representatives from the behavioral health providers, consumers, and leadership with the county to actually bring awareness and identify gaps in services. And so her service is, obviously key to the community with education, awareness, and prevention, and resiliency building. And so the Lewis and Clark Public Health mission is to improve and protect the health of all residents of Lewis and Clark County. And so that is our connection.
Gotcha. Now, what are the statistics on ACEs and suicide?
Well, in the original study, like I said, it was done in 1995, they found that if a person had 4 or more ACEs, it led to greater probability. And we say probability because adversity is not destiny. If you're aware of these things, you can change them. But it led to a greater probability. You had 20% more likelihood of attempting suicide. And also a 40 to 60% more likelihood to develop depression. And then there was also a study that came out in 2001 that was published in the Journal of American Medical Association, where they had studied over 17,000 people, and over 2/3, they say roughly 64%, had made suicide attempts. And during childhood, it was about 80% of kids, if they had adverse childhood experiences in their lifetime.
My goodness. So pretty much the opposite of the similar sounding ACTs, where the kids are working very hard to get the higher score. We definitely want to be concerned if you've got a higher score on your ACEs.
Right.
Now, any stories that you all can share in regards to this?
I think Jolene had some more on the statistics.
Oh, okay.
part.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry.
that's okay. And I just want to say too is when we talk about health, mental health is equal to physical health. So when we have challenges, it needs to be addressed. Just like you go to your primary care every year. I mean, really to have somebody you can talk to and see about mental health, and talk to your primary care to connect you to mental health services. And we say behavioral health. Behavioral health is mental health, substance use disorders, and behavioral issues that we find we have. You can have eating disorders. There can be different types of behavioral health. So it's amazing with the ACEs. You can identify. There's 10 key identifiers to help you to see if that was an adverse experience that you had as a child, and how it can relate to people's having constant health problems, and they're just not addressing those issues. And so there's, just knowing information, knowledge helps you to empower you to be able to take the steps you can take to have a healthier life. And so, what some of the work I do at the Lewis and Clark Public Health is primarily on crisis response systems and behavioral health, and then leading to also improving the continuum of care in the community. And so that's where I work with a local advisory council and behavioral health systems here who are key providers, stakeholders in the community, from Chaudere, St. Pete's Health, Pureview, the Commission on the Public Health, and law enforcement. They're all key in trying to address the behavioral health crisis response to improve it for better outcomes for our individuals who are calling for help. But some statistics that Rebecca was referencing is we recently did an analysis of the behavioral health crisis system here in Lewis and Clark County, just finished in last month, really August 2021. And one of the statistics was 45% of St. Pete's Hospital behavioral health admissions from 2018 to 2020 were actually diagnosed as suicide. And that was the reason for their admission to the behavioral health unit. Suicide attempt, suicide ideation. So thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself. And then another statistics or number that we were able to identify was through the Medicaid provider statistics in the state, and specifically this number in the county. 10 to 17-year-olds had a diagnosis. 30% had a diagnosis of suicide or threats to harm themselves, and that's a pretty staggering number to think about our children. And that's where the ACEs reflects what happens too, and that it leads to adulthood. It's a whole lifetime of addressing and prevention.
Right.
I mean, how can we? I mean, I am a recent grandparent of twins, and I raised my son, but now I can take some of this knowledge and apply it now. But back then, they didn't have this. This information didn't come out till 92, 90?
The late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s. So I know through my work in psychology studies, this was not available for teaching at that point, but now it is, and it's really very important for us all to know about this information for prevention and for intervention.
I've always been taught that the human being is a three-part person. It's the physical, it's the mental, and it's the spiritual. And unfortunately, we put way too much emphasis on the physical and not enough on the mental or the spiritual to keep the person in balance. And I know for many years that having mental illness, it was just not talked about. And unfortunately, you can't look at somebody like you can look at somebody that's in a wheelchair and realize, oh, you have something going on. You can't necessarily look at somebody that's got suicidal tendencies. You actually have to open up and ask and be able to convince them to talk about it.
Well, we can look at some symptoms like isolation, anxiety, that's happening frequently, and those are signs to look for to try to pay attention and try to talk to somebody about their thoughts. There could be having suicidal thoughts, and just to even ask. I've gone through a training through our Suicide Prevention Coalition, the QPR training, and it helps to teach you what signs to look for. But one of the hardest things is for people to ask their friend or an acquaintance, a colleague, to say, I've noticed you've been not enjoying what you've enjoyed before, that you've been calling out sick a lot, or you seem pretty glum, and then they start, say, how are you feeling? And they're like, well, I'm not really feeling like I really want to be here anymore. And then the hardest part is to ask them, have you been thinking about suicide, and do you have a plan? And if you can ask those questions, you can help to divert a suicide attempt and get that person to help. And so part of the training for the Suicide Prevention Coalition with Jess Hegstrom is that they have you go through the practice of saying that. And I was on the training with 6 to 8 people, and people just couldn't get around to asking that direct question in the role model playing that we were doing. And it's really something we have to get more comfortable with,
Right.
because our goal in the county and throughout the state really is to reach for zero suicide. During this COVID-19 time, it's even more prevalent. So talk to your friends and neighbors.
And what Jolene said is the hardest part of all of this is that, and especially with adverse childhood experiences, toxic stress in childhood, it's personal. It's really hard for people to talk about because we don't like to say that we had all of these adversities in our childhood, and talk about what they were attributed to. So you talked about stories. What I like to use, because I do trainings, I do these presentations, is I like to use my own story because I have a high ACE score. And I spent a lot of time before I became a therapist trying to understand how did this happen. And so I found the more I knew about it, the more I could make sense of my own story, and that I could then use that in a positive manner to help other people make sense of their stories and to understand how important learning resilience skills and having close connections. Those close personal connections are so important to mitigate the effects of ACEs.
Talking about asking questions too, I can't help but to think about somebody like Robin Williams, though. You mentioned that, the isolation and all of that, but you get those individuals like him that learn how to put on a brave face. It doesn't hurt to I would think, to be ready to just open and ask and stay on top of all your friends, not just the ones that seem to be maybe in a dark place, but check in and listen and try to listen.
Acting abnormally to regards to having sudden decisions that they've made, they're putting their things in order, or giving their things away, things like that you don't even think about, but heavy drinking or any of that, medication. There's many ways to look at it, but extreme behaviors that are not normal are sometimes signs you might not think about, but really pay attention to them because they are sort of a way to ask for help without asking for help.
Now, what are some action steps that people can take today?
Be a safe place for others. Practice self-care. Teach resilience skills. Connect with people. You don't know people's stories, so listen more than talk. And connect with us so that you can join our coalitions or collaboratives and set up trainings.
Okay.
Because we do have trainings available on adverse childhood experiences as well as resilience, and we do free screenings of movies called Paper Tigers and Resilience. And there's lots of trainings. Jolene referenced one that she took. Lots of trainings on the Suicide Prevention Coalition's website.
And the trainings are free, so you can go to the Public Health, Lewis and Clark Public Health website, and look up the Suicide Prevention Coalition, and they have youth-focused trainings in addition to adults, so ongoing, and ranging from 1 hour to 8 hours or more, right? So depending on what your profession is or your need is. I would say too I would just like to say is, action steps people could take is, for me, is working for the local advisory council. We have, it is open to the public once a month, the first Tuesday of the month at 11:30 on Zoom. People can join in, and it's providers from the community that are advocating, trying to make change, impacts, fill the gaps of behavioral health treatment and services that are not there, and then also address issues that are happening in the community. And so we're there as a group to help each other, and everybody's welcome to join in.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing you again for another United Way Partner Spotlight. Goodbye-bye.